Welcome everybody to Democratizing Immigrant Justice. This is a joint collaborative effort of a bunch of coalition of the willing that's helping to provide some equality in a much needed society right now. Woodson, if you could just give a quick introduction, we'd love to get started.
Thanks, Bart. My name is Woodson Martin. I'm an executive vice president at Salesforce and the general manager of our App Exchange ecosystem. I am also a board member with Mobile Pathways, and I got involved with Mobile Pathways because I'm a strong believer in the contribution that immigrant communities make to our society, and that I've seen just incredible injustice over the last few years aimed at immigrant communities. And I've been incredibly impressed with both the vision that Jeff and Bart have for Mobile Pathways and their execution on that vision, using technology to help solve really systemic and enduring problems for this community. So thank you for all the work, and I'm glad to be here with you today.
Thank you, Woodson. And it's true, we're facing one of the largest injustice challenges of our lifetimes. I mean, there are protests that have been decades long in the making because we don't all have the same equalities. There are some of us that simply have a better shot at the American dream than others, and that's why we're here to talk about it today. And I'm going to share some stories directly from the front line about those. So this is Amashi. She's a gay Black woman living in Oakland, been here for a few years, but can't find a job because of a COVID crisis. This is Henri. He washes dishes in San Diego and lost his job because of COVID. This is Maria. Maria has been in Oakland for over 20 years, taking care of homes so she could take care of her family. This is Pablo. Pablo is a dreamer, but he was too old to be an actual DACA dreamer. He was born in another country, but raised in the United States. So now he tends bar in San Francisco and Oakland. And in March, he got promoted to manager at one of the most prominent nightclubs in San Francisco, and then lost his job to COVID. And then there's Bart, an immigrant from Poland. I came here after the grayness of communism and martial law, which is what we called shelter in place back in those days. But my opportunities were different because of the color of my skin, because of bizarre twists of fate. Things for me were easier, and that's not fair. And I saw that firsthand when I got a letter from Donald Trump a few weeks ago. I don't get many letters from Donald Trump, so I read it. I was actually impressed he could even write. But I read this letter that said I was entitled, for me and my family, $2,000 because of COVID. But Pablo didn't get this letter. Henri didn't get this letter. Amashi didn't get this letter. Millions of Californians didn't get this letter because they're undocumented. And that's what we're here to talk about, because that's not fair, that's not just, and it's at the root of all these demonstrations that you're seeing. So a little bit about organization of Mobile Pathways. I'm going to introduce the other co-founder, Jeff, to be able to talk a little bit about our organization before we dive into the project.
Thanks, Bart. So I'm an immigration attorney and advocate. I've been working with asylum seekers since 2008. And the problem that immigrants face, including refugees, asylum seekers, is their inability to access justice and other legal services. And the reason that a lot of them cannot access these things is because they're relatively poor and demand is much greater than supply of free and low cost services. And so the solution that Mobile Pathways proposes and we're building is to use the Salesforce community to create technology for advocates and immigrants that we all can access. And the three kind of main components of this community that the advocates and the immigrants need are security, data security, efficiency, communications. Communications being the focus of Mobile Pathways, hence our name, because we realize that immigrants, asylum seekers, that's one piece of technology that they all have. And Salesforce excels at being able to communicate using that mode of communication.
And actually, go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, no, go for it.
And actually, one of the aspects that Salesforce may not even realize exists within their own company is the ability to work with nonprofits like ours to distill down that message. We actually were helped by both Melody and Jeff, who's on the call, to distill down our message and specific metrics. So Jeff, if you could talk about that. Hitchman, by the way.
I can, yeah, thank you. And you know, I'm an immigrant and I didn't experience any of these issues. I had a simple, privileged migration to this country, and I'm so sensitive to the work that Mobile Pathways does. They're a young org, but they're focused on such valuable work. When we started working with these guys, we talked about impact, and impact's a particularly difficult thing for organizations to track. Tactical data is usually available, how many cases you support and things like that. What's difficult to identify for lots of nonprofits is their impact. So we worked with them as a team to kind of focus and distill their current metrics and measurements and really come down with a simple data-driven impact model. We had lots of things to measure. We distilled it down. We had lots and lots of meetings, but we focused on SDGs as kind of our guideposts and our source of truth for the impact. And so we ended up with a pretty clear mission statement, pretty clear measurements for impact, some audiences that we understood who the people were that they were supporting, and really clear focus on safety and effectiveness and security, and just continue to be excited about the work that they do, and as they continue their journey, we're looking forward to spending more time with them. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you as well to Melody, who was such an instrumental part of that team. And there was a lot of good arguments we had about what metric was more important than others. So let's contextualize some of those abstract concepts with a specific project. In fact, probably one of the largest social experiments that is happening in our country. Our state is the only state that said this is not right and has offered $125 million to the 2 million plus undocumented immigrants in the state of California. 75 million of that's coming out of the state. 50 million is a private public partnership. We're going to talk about that 50 million today with the president of Grantmakers Concerned with Immigrants and Refugees, GSER, Darren, who's on the call today. And she's going to talk about what it took, because remember, 1 out of every 10 Californians is 10 Californian workers are undocumented. So Darren, if you could talk about how we could actually reach that audience.
Absolutely. So I want to underscore what Bart said earlier about structural inequities, and this is why this fund was created. Undocumented immigrants were excluded from stimulus payments and other supports, and that fact reflects longstanding structural and racial inequities that have been magnified by this pandemic. When we conceived of this fund, we knew that we couldn't make this work without local immigrant organizations as partners in distributing the cash assistance. My organization is a national organization, and so there's no way we could do this work without local groups. And when we set out to do this, we knew we wanted to partner with organizations that meet 3 criteria. 1 is commitment to equity and justice. 2 is establish trust in underserved localities, for example, rural communities, and also with hard to reach populations, Black, Indigenous, Asian Pacific Islander immigrants, LGBTQI immigrants, and so forth. Third, we also wanted them to have capacity to run the cash assistance program. At first, we thought we'd partner with about 6 local relief funds and have a very streamlined process. But over a period of 2 weeks in early April, when we were trying to launch this effort, we had more than 60 conversations, and we've since had about another 30 or 40 conversations with immigrant organizations across the state. And in this process, we learned a couple things that I want to uplift for you. The first is that if we truly want to center equity and justice and serve the most vulnerable of the vulnerable, again, Black, Indigenous, API, LGBTQI immigrants among them, we have to trust the small grassroots organizations that serve these immigrants, that these immigrants themselves trust. So that's number 1. And number 2, to succeed, we need organizations that bring both heart and capacity to the table. And for us, heart is either there or not, and capacity we can help create. So we went with groups with lots of heart. Actually, all 55 of them, and there might be a few more that we'll add to the mix, and many of them needed help on the capacity front. And that is actually where the platform that Mobile Pathways and Salesforce volunteers have built for us, that's given these diverse 55 partner organizations across the state the capacity they need to disperse cash assistance effectively and efficiently. And as importantly, and you wouldn't think of this, actually, well, I would say this for myself, I didn't think that technology could necessarily create a sense of community, but that's what Mobile Pathways has helped us do, is create a community working towards a collective goal and documenting that impact that was talked about earlier. And this has given all of us on our team and in the immigrant community or in immigrant communities across the state hope and inspiration in these really dark times. And I will turn it back to Bart.
Thank you, Darren. And to be honest, as we were trying to show earlier and we'll show now, we were only able to do that because of Salesforce. Not just because of the technology, but the community behind it. But consider this project that comes on your doorstep. Speaking of trust, a board of advisor, Jack Holmgren, introduced us to Darren 3 weeks ago, and she gave us this project and see if we'd be up for it. Remember, we're a young organization, still a little bootstrapped and scrappy, and she said, and their team, so what we'd like you to do is keep our data secure. We have hundreds of thousands of immigrants with sensitive data, their address information. It's going to be very worrisome. On top of that, we're going to have to align 55 nonprofits with their volunteers and staff to enter things in one distributed way. Also, the form, it's going to have to be multilingual. There are people, they're filling in the form on the phone. They're going to have to translate into Spanish, so they're going to have to see the form in Spanish language. By the way, some of those nonprofits want to ask custom questions because they're all going to collect core information, but they see this as a huge opportunity to survey their population and create a database of information on immigrants we've never had before. While you're doing that, could you anonymize it? When we aggregate report to the press and to the state, we're going to need to see all that sensitive information. That should be anonymous. By the way, we got 2 weeks. I've done a lot of IT projects. I've never seen anything like this in 2 months, let alone to try to do it in 2 weeks. And so the only thing I knew what to do was to call my own Ethan Hunt, who is Posey Chen. Posey's going to talk about now one of the first challenges we had to address, which was data security and privacy.
Hi, everybody. While we laugh at the way that Bob presents the challenge, I've got to get serious. When we were first assigned to take a look at this challenge, I thought, we know how to do this. We know Salesforce products so well. We know technology so well. We know how to secure data. We know this. We got a down pat. Let's go. Nothing prepared me for the very first question that somebody asked me on our very first call. Literally, somebody said, what if you were to be subpoenaed? I said, what? Peace? No. What if the government were to subpoena you or Salesforce or us for this data? What would happen? And I honestly didn't have the answer. And that told me. And the data, and by size, families. And we are happy to report that we were able to do this. And thank you very much for the opportunity to help.
Thank you, Posey. And then also thank you to Pedro Pavan, who was not on the call, that we're also getting some notes about a lag. So if the speakers could just speak a little bit slower to be able to make sure the information comes through. But thanks to Salesforce actually helped us draft the privacy and public statement about what would happen in that case. But it was a very big challenge. Another aspect was we were already on our way. We already had a community live that was actually built by a core of volunteers at Salesforce. So Brittany, if you could talk a little bit about the aspect of building the Salesforce community.
Yeah, thank you, Bart. So as Bart said, it took a team of people to come together and create this solution, this partner community solution in Salesforce. a team from Mobile Pathways, a team from All Cloud, and a team from Salesforce. And the initial goal of the project was to provide an external platform for NGO immigration partners and immigration attorneys to connect with asylum seekers, all while catering to the diverse needs of each of the partner organizations. And in order to fulfill this need to create a connected and personalized experience for these partners, we determined the partner community solution was the best approach. And so the ability to provide multiple user experiences within a single org that would each achieve different purposes was our biggest appeal. But the majority of the work that we did and the focus of this partner community build was designing the solution that would be scalable and that would also ensure this data security and privacy that we had to meet for each of the partner organizations, as Posey was discussing. And the initial partner community was built to support all of Mobile Pathways partners, creating the scalable solution that would still cater to these individualized needs of these partners. But then this laid a structure for the foundation of the SURF project, which made it possible to actually go live with this SURF project in just a matter of a couple weeks.
Thank you, Brittany. And we are live at this point. We've been collecting applications for the first few weeks, but the challenges kept coming. A volunteer said, I'm not going to enter in this data because of Salesforce. We do know Salesforce has a relationship with Border Patrol. And our view in terms of Mobile Pathways is, there's bad government, bad policies made by bad people, but there's no such thing as bad technology. There's no other option but to work with the government that we have. We can reform, we can vote and get new power structures into place, but removing technology, that's not part of the answer. We can use Salesforce communities for good to help distribute this funding and get it into the hands of Henri and Namashi. But it took time. We had to educate. We have weekly lunch and learns with all the partners. We have calls to explain to them our view. And Jeff, who's been working for over a decade with this community, is really helpful. Because if we take a step back at the wider level, we have to be honest with ourselves that we have to rebuild our communities. Now, I'm not talking about Salesforce communities. That was a huge part of this project and is what made it launch within 2 weeks. But that's just scratching the surface. We have rooted injustices. And it's the community of people at Salesforce, at Mobile Pathways, at GSER that made this happen. This is the volunteers, many of you who are on the call, many of you that are hopefully be able to see the recording, and thank you. Because we couldn't have done this in 2 weeks without you, whether it was helping to code communities, market it for a video, come up with social impact, it's because of people like you. And it brings me back to this letter. And I realize how unfair this letter is. My family's going to be fine. I didn't lose my job because of COVID. So I'm giving this money back. And I'm asking all of you to do the same, or at least join in support. I'm going to match any donation up to the amount I got from Donald Trump, a person who does not represent me or my values or what I want America to be, an equal and open access for the dream. If you can make any donation, bit.ly/tackle COVID to help redistribute the opportunities, I'll match it. I'm giving my CARES check away because I don't care about that government, not the one that speaks for me. Thank you guys for taking the time to listen. Please do take an action to make a gift. $500 is what every family here. These are actually true stories. The names have been changed for privacy. We are collecting these stories through Salesforce. These people have received their checks. And at this point, I'd like to open up the floor for any questions and answers to any of the speakers. And thank you again for the opportunity to share. Question, go ahead, question.
I've got one if I can jump in, which is I'd just like to learn a little bit more about how impacted individuals can get the help through the nonprofits for this particular program. Like what are the instructions for an average family who needs the relief?
Darren,
Bart, would you like? Yeah, sure. We partnered with local organizations that have existing relationships with community members. So by the time this was launched and funds were raised and available to give out, many of the groups have already amassed waiting lists of thousands of people. So they're working through that right now. We are hoping that the state will make available additional dollars that would not be one time only, because this is one-time cash assistance. And it was meant to be a stopgap measure to allow the state to put in place something that is similar to unemployment insurance. So as you might know, undocumented workers in California, pay about $7 billion a year in local, state, and federal taxes. So they pay into the system, but they're not able to take back out. And the hope is that there would be a parallel system for them that would give them support over time. I think, Bart, one of the things we've seen in the stories is that this helps people in this moment, but there needs to be a longer term fix. And Woodson, there's not an easy answer in terms of referring people because of the long waiting list already. We're able to help about 100,000 or so immigrants, and the need is, 2 million. So.
Yeah, because one of the aspects that the nonprofits have been asking is a prioritization based on economic factors. So currently, we've received close to 1,000 applications. We're just getting started. This is something we're expecting through the summer into early fall. This is some preliminary data we've already seen as of this morning from Salesforce. But this is definitely more of an economic impact, more than I expected. There's very few COVID cases, but much more impact of lost jobs or wages. You can see 31%, much higher than the unemployment rate that Trump was, parroting on Friday. It's 13%, not in these communities. So we do have to prioritize who's going to receive the funding, and that's something we're actively looking at, some sort of point scoring mechanism to build.
I would add that in farm worker communities, we are seeing direct health impact due to COVID because of their living situations. They live in extremely overcrowded housing, families, 2 or 3 families in a single trailer. That's the life of a farm worker. And many are forced to work either because they need the income or because they fear losing their jobs. And this has implications for all of us. It's about our food security, but it's also, about the health and well-being of really essential workers who need our help right now. And we did get a couple of donors who are targeting farm workers specifically. And hopefully, Bart, you and your colleagues will help us learn more about them through the system.
Yeah, and we didn't have the ability to show it here because we are collecting sensitive data, but there is a lot of information, almost to a census-like level of what we're learning about these communities, how they've been impacted, not only by COVID, but just overall systemic issues. And so we're just starting to scratch the surface of that data. Any other questions from anyone on the group?
Well, I have something I want to say to this group because it's Salesforce, mostly Salesforce employees. And I just wanted to bring up, something that one of the questions that we field a lot when we're out telling people about the community, because a lot of people bring up the issue of Salesforce and the kind of somewhat of a controversial past. A lot of you remember from a couple years ago. But I want to tell you that the product, the Salesforce community is extremely unique. There's no other product that can do what it does that I know of. It's fulfilling a need that is not met, and it's going to go a long way. And I just want to say that you work to the Salesforce employees, I believe you work for a good company. You work for a very generous company. You have absolutely top-of-the-line products, and you are winning a lot of us over. You've already won me over a long time ago, but you're winning a lot of people in the immigrant community over. And I see a really big future for for the community and helping people that we're talking about today.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo that and bring up again the names and the faces. In addition, our partners, All Cloud and Fionta Consulting, that have helped us build these technologies alongside just a wonderful group of volunteers. This is actually all that I could fit into this slide. There are more people that have contributed in other ways, but to, again, everyone on this slide, it would take me far longer than we have left to thank everyone individually. But thank you guys again. Posey, we can probably cap the recording at that point. Any other questions from the group?